Hey guys, Sean at Top 5 Fit here. We want to go through the potential risks for adding barefoot training to your programming. Now, in a perfect world, there would be no injuries, there would be no problems, and everybody would be running barefoot, and there would be no more foot problems in the world. Unfortunately, that's not how it works, and we do have to address potential issues that could end up being speed bumps in your training. So things you want to look out for as you begin to add barefoot training into your regimen. Number one, Achilles tendinitis and calf strain. When you immediately go up onto your toes because you're barefoot, you are automatically firing that tissue at a much greater rate. It's taking more stress, they're taking more stress than, let's say, walking around in a pair of loafers or work shoes or even low high heels for the ladies. These muscles, these structures tend to be relaxed on a given work day or just in our daily activities. So when you make the switch over to barefoot training, what ends up happening is the firing rate of this muscle tissue, the firing rate of this connective tissue tends to increase. You are now on the balls of your feet a lot more. You are absorbing more forces from coming down off of structures, jumping up onto structures, pushing off of your toes so that you can actually propel yourself forward into a run. These are all things that ultimately add to the stress level of the calf musculature, of the Achilles tendon. You can develop what I like to call itises in those areas, which is basically inflammation that makes it very difficult for you to actually fire the tissue or use the tissue properly. Things we want to think about before putting this into barefoot training. Number two, potential risk, potential concern, injuries to the bottom of the foot itself. Guys, you have little to no foot protection at all. I run in Vibrams on the trail. That gives me that Vibram sole, which at least keeps things from piercing my skin. But when you actually go barefoot on the trail, there are elements that you have to think of. There could be thorns, there could be glass, there could be all kinds of things that ultimately could cut your foot, tear a nail, rip in between the toes. These are all potential risk factors. One of the things I tend to do when running barefoot on the trails, especially when I'm not in my Vibrams, my stride shortens greatly. I don't like to open my feet up quite a bit. I don't like to open my stride up wide so much. And I'm actually shortening my field of vision just a hair so I can see potential issues in front of me. When you're on the road, you have a tendency to look off into the distance and kind of knock the miles down as they come. But when you're on the trail, there's a few more factors involved. Do I want to step on that pebble? Do I want to step on that branch? So I do tend to bring that field of vision in just a little bit so that I can kind of avoid any potential dangers like that that would end up causing me to sit on the side of the trail with my foot bleeding. Number three, could increase your chance for plantar fasciitis. I say this because now that the foot is not bound up in a shoe, your toes, the balls of your feet, all of the tissue on the underside of your foot, your plantar fascia, now have a chance to splay, open, twist, turn, bend around any and all things your foot comes into contact with in the ground. Now, in a perfect world, once again, this would cause no problem and all of your foot problems would be healed right away. But the reality is this. When your feet are in shoes, when you're at work, that tissue tends to be in one of two states. Either highly tense because you're standing on them all day, or highly relaxed because you're sitting on them all day. Either way, you're now taking that same foot into an environment where you are literally pushing all angles of range of motion possible by the foot. This can create irritation, inflammation, and even the dreaded plantar fasciitis. These are things we want to pay attention to when it comes to frequency. How many times are you actually going onto the trails in a barefoot fashion? How much time are you spending out there? If you have a 5-mile run, are you running all 5 miles or are you only doing the first mile, giving your feet a chance to warm up, and then maybe moving back into your shoes to cover the rest of the distance? In my case, I took an entire year to get used to running barefoot. So every mile that I would run, a certain portion of that would be ran barefoot, just to get the feet used to the idea of manipulating the earth and basically being able to interpret all those different nooks and crannies that are thrown at us by the environment. An entire year. Didn't end up with too many issues, some minor aches and pains here and there, but it was a good idea to get used to the terrain and allow my feet to get used to the terrain before just heading out for a 5 to 10 mile run out of nowhere. Number 4, get ready for blisters. It's going to happen. Your feet have been protected all of these years by footwear. That footwear has kept water off of the bottoms of your feet. It has kept you dry and comfortable. Well, now you're going to go out into Mother Nature. So if you step onto a trail that happens to be moist, what happens? The same thing happens to your feet on wet trail that it would in the bathtub. That tissue is going to get soft. It's going to get mobile, it's going to get stretchy, it's going to get irritated, and it may develop a blister. The same thing can actually happen on dry terrain. Because your feet aren't necessarily developing any kind or absorbing any kind of moisture, you tend to almost move inside your skin. And that can create slight separations, which ultimately can become swollen, fluid-filled, and there's another instance of blisters. Now, up until my second year of running barefoot, I had never experienced a single blister. A lot of the races that I had actually done up until that point were anywhere between 10Ks and half marathons and an attempt at maybe a full. Third year, I went into a 50K, pretty confident on my ability to finish, did not take into consideration everything that was the environment, ended up with my first blister. My feet got wet. We had to do a water crossing. I basically went through water that was about up to my thighs, thought everything was fine, came to my first hill, and I could actually feel the feet start to move within the skin in my shoe, and I knew the blister was coming. So no matter what, adding barefoot training into your conditioning, at some point in time, you're going to have to deal with the issue of blisters. My advice, take it very slow, allow them to heal, try not to do a whole lot of popping and whatnot in fear of infection, but it's just kind of one of those things that actually comes with the territory. If you're somebody who can get by without dealing with that issue, great, and I hope you many years without having to have them. However, it is something we do need to be concerned about, which is why we mention it in this series. Number 5, probably the greatest potential risk for adding barefoot training into your routine. This should be listed as number 1 because it's going to make you feel worse than any other injury or issue you could deal with. Haters. You are going to come across people who are going to look at you strange because you don't have shoes on. You could be walking through the park and mom and pop walking their dogs are going to look at you like you're insane. You're going to field questions. People are going to ask you why, how, who, when, everything under the sun as to why you're not wearing shoes like the rest of the world. Don't worry about it. If you're confident in your path and it's something you want to gain the benefits from, move forward and let them wonder. But it is something that's going to happen. I've been running barefoot for 8 years now and I still get looked at like something's wrong. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Please give us a like if you find the information valuable. If it's something that you can put into your regimen, awesome. Remember, there's always potential risk to adding anything new to your training, but at some point you have to kind of look at that risk-gain ratio. What do you actually have to gain? How can you actually benefit by adding barefoot training? We like to be up front here. We like to let you know every side of possibility, every angle. So there's the potential risk, but if it's something that you think you can actually add into your routine and gain something from, then by all means, get it thrown in. Thanks a lot. See you soon.